me, what was important to me was that he lived.
All right. LeRoi Armone Barrett. I have sickle disease, and growing up with sickle cell, I have my ups and downs. Sickle disease it's a rare form of sickle cell. The E trait comes from it's of Asian descent. So my grandmother's from the Philippines, and so I'm the middle child of five. And so what it did was that E trait skipped three generations, or two generations and some change, crossed the Atlantic Ocean just to influence my hemoglobin. So that being said, though, I think sickle disease isn't super prominent, not necessarily prominent, but when it comes to different kinds of sickle cell, it's less it's not as ferocious as those who might have SS or SB or whatever you may have. So I'm blessed in that sort because I have friends who really go through it. You being one of them. When it comes to downs, it's literally that other side of that, which is just people your entire life are telling you what you can and cannot do, and what you should or should not look out for, and having to test your limits. Like, I played basketball, and a lot of my coaches didn't understand where I was coming from. In fact, I had a coach who really didn't respect me until he saw me sickle in a practice. It was really intense practice, and I think it was wintertime, and I sickled, and he really, from then on, he saw me differently. You could tell that he saw what I was going through was real, and it was tough. And even then, there was still a disconnect. So having to navigate that and mentally, because if your entire life, if somebody's telling you what you can and cannot do, that'll mold you in ways that you may or may not like. And when your back's against the wall, sometimes you just gotta fight. And so I didn't realize until recently that for the most part, I did right by myself and continuing to play basketball and then proving people wrong. And it might not have been pretty. I might not have been some 5-star athlete going straight to the league, but I did what I had to do, and I'm happy that I stuck by it. It's there's a teeter totter, especially being young. You're immature, or not immature, but you're irresponsible. You know what I'm saying, to an extent. And so I'm definitely not on my medical tip the way I should be. But I think right now I'm very aware of what I have, and I'm very aware of just, it's always in the back of your mind. Like, every decision that you make, you're like, okay, you've been out a lot and you don't feel too good. You might sickle. Just letting you know, that voice in the back of your head, your conscience or whatever, like, hey man, you don't feel very good, your legs do hurt a little bit. If you leave this house, you might not come back the way you want to come home, or you might not be coming home at all. You might put yourself in a really bad position, especially navigating friendships and what they want to do, and substances and all this and that. And for the most part, I don't really partake because of that reason. Like, I'm already at a disadvantage, and I don't want to say disadvantage because that sounds as if I'm making myself a handicap. You know what I'm saying? And I don't see myself that way. But I'm already dealing with something. So if you put something on top of that, now I have to deal with this through that headspace. It's just not it's just not smart. You know what I'm saying? That's not intelligent. But at the same time, sometimes I want to kick it, man, and it's tough. Sometimes I want to kick it. But yeah, so it's definitely, it's always in the back of your head. It's always in the back of your head, and as you said, sometimes you don't know your limits unless you test them. So basically, to sum it up, I'm just always testing my limits.
My name's Leroy Barrett. I'm LeRoi Armone's father. I have sickle cell trait, and I'm the eighth child of eight. The bulk of us have sickle cell trait. None of us have sickle cell. When he was born with sickle cell, I was beside myself because he's the third child. Like, how in the heck does it happen? We did not know his mother had her hemoglobin E trait. We didn't know that at all. She didn't, so we didn't. So we learned that when we found out he had it. I was cognizant. This is not the same thing as prepared at all, right? I was aware, but I wasn't prepared at all. And early in his childhood, he was maybe 10 months, and he had his first crises. That is the toughest of things, period. because your children at 10 months, and they can't communicate. They can't tell you they can't say this is the issue, this is what's going on. So you're doing guesswork and you don't know what's really going on. Even when the doctors tell you, I don't have the greatest trust in the medical profession in the first place. So when they tell you there's some disconnect from what my child's actually going through and those words coming out of your mouth, so that's a challenge altogether. For me, what was important to me was that he lived. It was particularly special that I didn't treat him specially. Do you understand what I'm saying? Setting him aside and doing different, I fervently believed, would have damaged him. So I made sure that I didn't regard him in any way different, so he wouldn't perceive any difference. That was incredibly important to me. While at the same point, like I said, I'd seen sickle cell do terrible things to people, so I was scared. But he wouldn't know. Me saying that probably surprised him.
Yeah.
I didn't give anything off that says, dude, I'm afraid that anything will set you off and you'll be in the hospital for who knows how long, and it'll hurt you in what kind of way, right? Yeah. But I didn't give that off because I needed him to not live that. I needed him to not have that consciousness. And so the whole what you cannot do is against everything I believe in, period. When you live and live, it's the only choice you have. No, you can't run around in fear. You'll never even see who you are. If the thing that is at the apex of your focus is what to be afraid of, you can't live like that. And so early he got a handicap placard because he had an ailment. Yeah, I was pissed at that. I want nothing to do with that. I want everyone to park in the handicap space, don't ever use that thing, because there's no such thing as a handicap. More importantly, that placard makes a statement, and a young impressionable mind receives that. In the worst of cases, they don't receive it cognizantly. They receive it subliminally. This is a thing that's programmed in you that you have you got some problem that you won't even be able to touch later because you didn't cognizantly choose it. You were subliminally programmed with the thing. This is how I function. I had every problem with that in every way. So as he grew up, I'm sure I very scarcely mentioned to him that he had sickle cell. I probably had the least conversations with him about sickle cell because I know that as a father, is the male image for a son, what I said about it would have a huge impact. How I handled it would have a huge impact. So I just dealt with him as much as I possibly could without any mention of it. When it was time for him to do sports, I had to be reminded that he has sickle cell and maybe we need to be a little more careful. That's not my thing. My thing is go out there and get it. Whatever it is in life, I don't care what that thing is. Let's find out first. Make the problem first. This is where my head is. I don't want to say, let's be cautious and not do. No, let's get out here. Whatever the problem is, we'll deal with that. Try first. Venture first. That's my mentality. People have ailments in life that, particularly when they're growing up with them, their parents can be the biggest and most damaging factor in their world simply by saying what you cannot do. And my father, singularly the greatest human being on the planet I've ever known, wasn't capable of giving me that message on any level about anything that you can't do. It's not part of his psyche. So it's not part of mine either. And I do understand that peripheral things have that kind of impact, like a handicap placard. A handicap placard that's for you and you're one child out of 5. That's going to be an impact. Yeah. That's going to mean something. For sure. Right? It's just you. So what's wrong with me? And I had every problem with that suggestion. He wasn't any different than any of the rest of the kids, right? Because that was my particular concern, that maybe if I treated him different, hey, everybody could do this, but you slow down. My brain couldn't even process that because I know the kind of impact that would have on him. So
and I could hang too. Yeah,
of course.
That's why I felt like it was, if anything, I was special because I was supposed to be in the pool for X amount of time and I was in way later. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
I'm not a fan in any regard of prescription drugs because they are largely cumbersome, much more so than they are helpful, right? And if there's a way to get around them, which there is, we were born without prescription drugs. That's the thing that came along way later in civilization. So there are ways to deal with everything that you deal with, particularly preemptively as opposed to reflexively, right? take care of you first, and the things that'll come. If you, I'm largely metaphysically understood, metaphysically connected, but I listen to my body, and my body will tell me. It literally talks to me. And what happens is we get further away from our own systems of healings if we get these assisted things that we ultimately come dependent on, and that puts your body in worse shapes, right? So I have no respect for that. But it's also that as a black man living in America in particular, we are going to get the butt end of whatever it is that can be offered to us. And a lot of the times, that's not even heinous in nature, sadly. It is just a learned behavior from the citizens, the individuals who prescribe you or deal with you. They've been taught their whole lives of what you're not. They've watched every television show of their upbringing where the black people were the butlers or the maids or the drug dealers, right, or the gang bangers. So they've been planted subliminally that what you're worth is little. And so I'm going to involuntarily contribute to you little. I'm going to focus on you very little. I'm going to give you the bare minimum. I'm going to deal with you on the level that I have to satisfy the Hippocratic Oath. But other than that, it's not because you're a human being and I value you, right? And I've had that treatment. I've had that experience. I've dealt with that. So I'm not very big on the medical science field because it's largely people who don't receive us accurately.
Time is something you do not have. It's something you do not have. And so with COVID and the fact that racism and police brutality don't take a break, it does not. Mental health is staggering for sure.
And I went through a moment where getting to the mental health issue and how I understand it all. My father went through it, and I had my own brief bout. Right, I'm a pretty well put together person. I can be incredibly eloquent in speech. Communication is my thing, right? So when I told the people around me that I was literally suffering from depression, it was not believed. It wasn't believed. It wasn't believed. That is part of the bane we carry as black people and as black men in particular, right? You're strong. We have lived in spite of. We exist in spite of. Certainly whatever that is, you can deal with it. I don't even, right? I don't even need to deal with you with that. And you, I can see the way you do math, the way you communicate, the talents you have, those things are irrelevant. Those things have nothing. They have no bearing on my mental state that you can't see. No matter who you are, you can't see that. That's just like you having sickle cell. I come up and meet you and talk to you. Even when you tell me that, I can't have any connectivity to that reality that you have because I can't see it. And sadly, largely, we're visual people. That's how we learn, right? And so to see that that's a struggle for my son now, that he's in an arena where these things can be things he has to be confronted with. It is still a difficult challenge to even support him. Because you don't know what support a person needs. It's my son. I love him to death. He has my everything without me thinking about it. That doesn't mean I have the information I need all the time. And even with that, there are things that are going on that one you won't say because they might be too personal for you or you're not just comfortable with. And then other things are going on that you just can't put into words. There is no equivalent in words for that thing.
And then there's the stuff you don't think someone can receive too.
Right. Yeah, so the myriad of things you can't share because you're not free to, for whatever reason that might be. And I have to weave through that and see what the actual need is, what you really want from me. Sometimes you can iterate that directly. Sometimes you absolutely cannot. And that's where that challenge is in the mental realm. Because it's also an impairment to you being able to do that. Right? You're struggling even to communicate what you want to communicate that you normally can communicate because that system is being disrupted. So even when you get healthy, we have stigmas. You know, I'm afraid that people call me crazy or whatever because people are stupid. Just being candid. People are stupid, you know? And so you got those concerns about how people will respond to you, whatnot, and so that creates some inhibitions and it makes that many more barriers for you to communicate on a efficient level to where you can really be helped.
Jasper House Warriors is important because it's funny. I was a person who was dealing with mental health issues, and I still thought mental health was like stupid. You know what I'm saying? But it just makes sense. Your brain is the most complex thing on you that belongs to you. You know what I'm saying? And it deals with everything. It's the reason my hands are moving. It's the reason I'm talking. It's the reason why I'm moving my hands and talking at the same time. So clearly, when you put all that pressure on your brain to do everything and constantly taking information, things are going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Just naturally, especially if you have sickle cell or if you have issues, whatever it may be, you're going to internalize those things, and they may or may not turn into some type of issue. You know what I'm saying? Some type of illness or condition, right? And that's okay. And that's okay. The reason why we're having so much conversation about it is because it is way more common than you think it is. Because I thought it was corny and I thought it wasn't real while I was dealing with depression. And that's exactly why you have to have these conversations. Because there's someone out there who knows that they're depressed and they know that they're going through it and they're not getting what they need. And they're not getting what they need as a black man or a black kid or a black woman or a black child. And they're not getting what they need as a black person with sickle cell. And they're damn sure not getting the care that they need as a black kid with sickle cell or a black person with sickle cell with a mental health issue. I can tell you that. That's facts. And if they are, I love you. I'm so happy for you. You know what I'm saying? But we need to make it a commonality. We need to make that the bar.